There we go. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just in case there's people that want to listen to it afterwards. All right. So as I said, very informal, raise your hand, interrupt me, type in the chat if anything comes up. There is not going to be an official Q&A at the end. I like to do Q&A in between each segment because it's very hard for the brain to wait when you have a burning question. So we'll tackle one thing and then there'll be a Q&A. There's a number of coaching tools in this presentation. One that I will really sort of experiment with we will do it as a whole group. And if we have time, I hope there's one where I can put you in breakout rooms for 10 minutes. So it will be light touch, quick, but at least will give you a flavor of it. So, want to set that intention that, depth might not be where we're going today, light touch, but it'll give you an idea of what it feels like. All right, so let's take a look and see what we are doing today. So it's really the neuroscience of coaching. There's 3 aspects today that I will cover. There's many more, but really link them to why coaching works. And it's a great argument for all of us to share with clients, because then they will understand why they are in a coaching relationship and why it's useful. That's very, very important. Not only for how they can lean in and sort of use their own tools, use what you share with them, but also for us as coaches in terms of marketing, saying there is a neuroscience rationale behind it all, so we know why it works. And it is a fast-moving, fast-changing environment. There's crises all over the world in organizations and in families, and neuroscience can really help us managing this. So this is where we will go big picture. And in terms of exactly sort of agenda today, we will look at neuroplasticity, which for me really is neuroplasticity equals change equals coaching, because that's what our clients come to us for. They are looking for some kind of change, and it is directly linked to neuroplasticity, the way the brain constantly has the potential to rewire itself. A couple of you pointed to this in the chat. What you like about the brain is that it is flexible. There is a lot of potential. Many times it's untapped, and that points to neuroplasticity. We will also look at managing stress. Many of my clients, for sure, whether they are in organizations or just generally life in itself, can bring a lot of stress. So there is a wonderful tool and neuroscience research that points to what the brain needs in order to feel better. So we'll look at that. And then there is this, being and doing. I'm sure you have clients that are hell bent on doing, and think it's really the be all and end all. And today I want to share with you that it is not, that there's 2 different ways of working. And so from a brain perspective, it's not just one thing, but it's 2. And so, yeah, the brain is a monstrous and beautiful mess. There's all this untapped potential. And so the aspects that I'm sharing with you today are part of this beautiful interconnected brain. So keep in mind that although we're pulling it apart today, but it's not how it works. The brain is a system. It is like an orchestra. All the different pieces need to work together. And so today we're just pulling out 3 pieces that just to understand it better. But in terms of the brain and the brain structure, they're interconnected. So just keeping that in mind. And so question, why are we even talking about it? Why would we talk about neuroscience and coaching? What has this got to do with anything? I think, as I mentioned earlier, the brain is plastic and it can change. And because our clients essentially come to us for change in many different ways, it is directly related to neuroplasticity and helping them understand the process of how habits and repetitive actions are wired in to create these super highways, and why it's so hard to change, why it can be so frustrating and exhausting, points directly to a neuroscience rationale, and it can really normalize the fact that that we all, not only our clients, we all get frustrated and exhausted and sometimes want to give up as it relates to changing something. So the science can really help us be less hard on ourselves and have more empathy around the process of change. And then number two, we tend to not be fully integrated human beings, and that points to the system of the brain. You know, integration is when all the pieces of the brain are really linked together and work together beautifully. And just from a human being perspective, it just so happens that there are pieces of the brain that are not quite in the puzzle yet. They're sort of a little bit out there, which creates stress, limiting beliefs, saboteur. If you are a CTI graduate, that's the term we use at the Coaches Training Institute. But the limited voice, the little nasty voice on your shoulder, that's all sort of the same thing, and it points to something, a piece of your brain that's not quite integrated. When I talk about brain, what I'm by extension also mean is brain and body. I mean, if you are into somatic coaching, embodiment, just know that it's not just this piece, but it's the whole, again, the whole system, the body and the brain all working together. And so coaching helps us integrate these pieces. It looks at the puzzle pieces that are sort of have been left behind, and coaching helps clients integrate and bring it back into the whole. And then, number three, we are highly programmed for reaction. It keeps us safe. It's also related to neuroplasticity, depending on what we've gone through in life. And coaching helps us make more choices. Coaching is about awareness. And so we bring into awareness that which we react to, and coaching can help us become more aware and then shift that. So we're not going to be run by that, but more stepping back by our observer mind and looking at it and going like, okay, I can do this differently. So these are just three pieces, three neuroscience rationales for coaching. And you can help pull these out. You will get the PowerPoint. And if you need any kind of marketing materials, you can use this as quotes. Coaching helps us integrate aspects of ourselves. It helps us choose instead of being run by habits, and all of this, if this is helpful. Okay. So today we're looking at three of the biggest, some of the biggest challenges, and there are many others, but this is what we will focus on today: managing stress, then the willingness to fail and explore outside of our comfort zone. You know, the clients that say that's not comfortable. It's not my comfort zone. It's not comfortable. It's uncomfortable. Well, basically what they're talking about is this is not my neural pathway, translated. That's outside of the super highway that I've built. And I don't want to, use the dirt road because it's exhausting and tiring. It's basically what they're saying. It's not comfortable. I don't have a strong neural connection there. So we'll explore that. And then again, the balance of being and doing, task versus just being. All right. Well, without any further preambles, let's go and look at stress. Now, this is fascinating in many, many ways. This is research on the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that sits right behind your forehead. And it is also called the executive of the brain, or the CEO. It's basically what makes you super smart when it is in just right. And you can see the just right at the apex of this curve. And just right is when two neurotransmitters are in good balance. And this is by research by the wonderful Amy Arnston out of Yale. And she has focused her research, her neuroscience research, on these two neurotransmitters. There's other stuff going on in terms of hormones and other chemicals, but these two neurotransmitters are the ones that are most sensitive to stress and stimulation. And so she researched that. Dopamine is the reward neurotransmitter. So every time we do something that feels good, is rewarding, or in anticipation of a reward. And I always say this is sometimes why it feels so much nicer to plan for a vacation than actually going on one. It's like thinking about it, dreaming about it, that gives us dopamine. That's rewarding. So in anticipation or when we're doing something that is rewarding, that's dopamine. And norepinephrine is an adrenaline. It's a stimulant. And so this is about when something is exciting and stimulating. So in terms of the brain, stress equals stimulation. And we have added the word stimulation. Amy Arnst would only use stress because from a neuroscience perspective, stress is needed in the brain. It's not a dirty word, but culturally, generally speaking, when we hear the word stress, we go, oh, it's a bad thing. I don't want it. Well, it's not strictly true. So we have added the word stimulation because it sort of expands our vocabulary and our horizon a little bit in terms of what's going on in the brain. So when your brain or the brain of your client, the prefrontal cortex, is in just right, it will have enough dopamine and norepinephrine. And what you get, or what your clients get, are the blue words. Goal direction, so very clear, that's the outcome, that's what I want. Delaying gratification, which is, in my case, when my prefrontal cortex works, and I'm in more or less just right in that zone, delaying gratification means not to press the send button on my email too quickly, but making it nicer, sounding nicer, so that I don't have to regret pressing send and it's like short and mean. So that's delaying gratification. Or if you're into cookies, it's like, no, I'm not going to have that one. And I would imagine, and please forgive me if I get this all wrong about Ramadan, but what I would imagine is you would need to be really good at delaying gratification because you have a long fasting period. And so that means that your prefrontal cortex has to be more or less in just right. If it's in too little, or when you're really stressed, that delaying gratification will be impaired. And that is then poor impulse control. You might be tempted to break the fast. So that might be sort of where this fits in for you. And please, as I said, correct me if this is totally wrong. Memories, making and retrieving. Decision making, again, it's clear. And then there's empathy, understanding what others are thinking. Empathy is really, really activated when the prefrontal cortex is in just right. And then thinking in abstract concepts. That is not black and white, but we understand that nothing ever is black and white, that there are shades of various colors. So that's your prefrontal cortex at its best. And it happens when you just have the right amount of dopamine and norepinephrine. In other words, the just right amount of stimulation. When your prefrontal cortex or that of your client is in too little, so you don't get enough of this, or in too much, and this is the fascinating aspect of the whole thing, is you get the red words. Too little might feel slightly different, but from a prefrontal cortex functioning, too little and too much is the same thing. You get the red words. When you're in too little or too much, foggy thinking, poor impulse control, you don't know where you left your car keys, poor decision making, lack of empathy, you get impatient, black and white thinking. It does not matter to your prefrontal cortex whether in too little or too much. This is what will show up. So I'm going to stop here. And what I would like you to do is think about a time when you were either in too little or too much, or if you can't think of an example, think of a client that you have that's either in too little or in too much. And what I would like to know is, when you look at the red words, what's showing up and what does it feel like? So come off mute, and I'm going to take the slide down. Come off mute or type in the chat. When you have a client there in either too little or too much, what are you seeing? Or when you are. So too little is basically boredom, and too much is basically overwhelm, burnout. What does it feel like?
Poor impulse control. Poor impulse.
Jill, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Jill, yeah, go
Both,
ahead.
when it's too much and it's too little, it's poor impulse control. Straight away, I recognize this now when you said this.
Yes, yes. And may I ask what your poor impulse control is? Like, what are you doing that, where you can't hold back? But if you don't want to share that, please tell
Chocolates.
me to not.
No, it's okay. It's eating chocolate or sweets.
Yeah.
That's how I know
Yeah.
when I'm in the perfect spot where you on the top of there, because then I know I don't have to. So I just need to have chocolate now, and then I have chocolate now.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and yeah.
Yeah, really, I love that, Jill. A really, really lovely example, because when your prefrontal cortex is in just right, you can still have the chocolate, but you are choosing it.
Exactly. Yes.
It's not like I'm going to have that chocolate. It's the prefrontal cortex kicks in and goes, well, do we need to have the chocolate? Is it the first, the second? Can we wait till later? That's delaying gratification. Yeah, great example. Natalia, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So I think for me, it's forgetting things. It's both when you're too relaxed and it's basically don't have anything to worry, like vacation, versus when you're too stressed and you have to handle many things at the same time. And you're also, in both cases, I tend to forget things. So
yeah, no, absolutely. It's and for me, so great example, Natalia. For me, it's that the memory, right, forgetting things, but it's then combined with foggy thinking.
yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
look, I knew I had this. I knew I had it. I knew I could find it. I know it was right here. But my brain is so foggy and my memory is so poor that it could literally stare me in the face and I wouldn't be able to see it, which usually happens with my glasses. It's like, I knew I had them. I knew they were somewhere. I wonder where they are. My husband goes like, they're right there. They're right there on the kitchen counter. It's like, that's either overwhelm, too much, or boredom, which I find interesting. So, Natalia, you were talking about when it's too much, when you mentioned, you said the word stress. Does anyone have an example from when they're bored? Because that might be a little, in our world these days, it's maybe not as recognizable because most of us are too busy anyway. But when you're bored, what happens? Yes, Svetlana, easily irritated. Really, really great example. Or when a client is bored, what do they do?
I can go,
Yeah, go
Ursula.
ahead.
So,
Yes.
so whenever we're bored, we're losing interest. There is no interest in anything. Like the rhythm is like that. When clients they come and they say they're not interesting, they want to, like, part of them wants to achieve goals, but another part that's not losing interest. They don't have the fire, inside, so that they can be motivated. So the rhythm is typically like this. So you don't want to do anything. You just want to just maybe procrastinating as well, something like that.
Yeah. No, that's a great, really great example. So here's the fascinating thing about coaching. In coaching, we need to know where the client is on the stress curve. We need to know if they're in too little or if they're in too much, because it requires two slightly different coaching strategies. If you have a stressed client that's already in the too much curve, even if they're not right at the bottom, but they're already over there on that other side of the curve. They don't need challenging assignments, big requests, bigger, more pushing, requesting, and you can. They don't need that because they're already over there. We do this as coaches and we're going to tip them right down to the bottom. That is what a board client needs. They need stimulation. So bigger requests, challenges, values, purpose, vision, those are all things that are stimulating. Novelty, try this, experimentation, let's do that. They need this energy and they need something that's stimulating. So it can be very useful to figure out where clients are, not only in the coaching relationship, because it'll help you know what you're doing in terms of, size and stimulation and all of that, but it can also help them in their life. I had a client many years ago who wanted to change jobs and location, and she kept saying, oh, this job and it's just too much, and I'm constantly tired and I'm overwhelmed, and then at one point I was going like, this didn't sound like overwhelm. It sounded like the other side of the curve. So I had her walk this stress curve, and this is what you can do with this handout or this PowerPoint slide. Have the client stand in too little and explore what's it like when you're here. Have the client stand in too much. What's it like when you're here? And now let's go to just right. What's it like when you're there? Because couple of things. My client was actually in too little. She was bored because she'd been in the job for like 20 years, and what she needed was a challenge. She needed stimulation, and that gave her energy and eventually led her into a more just right. The other thing is, it is my experience that very few clients actually know what just right is. They think too much is just right. And from a brain perspective, that makes no sense. You're in just right when you have the just right amount of norepinephrine and dopamine. If you're in too much, you're not in just right, you're in too much. And so we need to figure out, what does just right feel like? When it's exciting and rewarding, you can focus, you have empathy, you have memory, clarity, goal direction, you're in the zone. What's that like? And so then we can help our clients move from too little or too much into a just right by asking questions such as, what would get you from here to there? What do you need? And there's different things they need on either side of the curve. Yeah, Svetlana, easily irritated. Sinamis, can't focus. Mar, too much, a stress client. Foggy thinking, not knowing where to start in order to make progress on his objectives or deal with setbacks. So that's a very, Mar, it's a very typical, too much a stress client. And very often they will say, I'm so stressed, I don't know where to begin. But I also have clients that say, I don't know where to begin. And then I don't know which side of the curve they're on. Because when clients are bored, when they're understimulated, I mean, think about when you are bored. It's really hard to get off the couch. You really want to do something, but your brain is just not cooperating. It's just like, no, I need to just sit here. I don't know where to start. It's all too much. Which is interesting, because what we most need in that moment is something fun and exciting to get us off the couch. So if you ever have the opportunity to be bored, think about, I need something that's rewarding, that's fun, and that's exciting. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Questions? Type in the chat, or even better, come off mute. So as I said, you can use that stress curve and use it in your coaching. Pull it out, have your client embody too little, have them embody too much, have them move into just right, and then the body will also tell them what that feels like.
Ursula, I
Manu's
have
asking,
oh, yeah, there
Yeah.
is a question. Sorry.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
There's a question, yeah. What is the most effective strategy when a client is on the very stress side of the curve? Excellent question. I think coaching and coaches are brain managers. We help manage our clients' brains, to your question, Mar. When they're very stressed, they are most likely not able to really fully be present in the coaching because they have lack of memory, lack of empathy, lack of goal direction, foggy thinking. So you don't want that in coaching. So whatever you can do to help from too much into at least a little bit into a just right. It could be breathing. Naming the emotion, which we are all so good at, actually does that. Naming the emotion in our program as part of the prefrontal cortex and stress, we have a tool called stress management by effectiveness. And naming the emotion is one of them. It's the first one. And so in coaching, what's our first question? How do you feel? What's the emotion? What's going on? Tell me exactly. And when we do this, the stress in the brain already goes down. Naming the emotion is the first step into reducing stress. And it is researched. It's not woo-woo, it's not, we are emotional human beings. And when we can talk about how we feel, it doesn't get suppressed. When it gets suppressed, the toxic chemicals, the stress chemicals increase. But when we speak about it, they get released. So breathing, naming the emotion, and then, you know, the prefrontal cortex gets activated more when we have to start thinking clearly about something. And when we have to narrow down the emotion or one or two or three emotions and not the whole bucket, that is when the prefrontal cortex is activated. And so it brings the prefrontal cortex a little bit more back into the system, which helps with stress. And as coaches, we do it naturally. We do it all the time. Okay, great. Keep putting things in the chat. I'll move on, and we'll keep an eye on the chat.
Ursula, just want to add one thing from
Yes.
somebody who's been using this tool as well. Like what's really amazing about this tool too is that the embodiment itself with the whole like thing. So when you go into too little or too much and you move the client, like let them really move the spots and ask them to feel that and change the emotion with the spot, it's really powerful. And whenever you move them, as you said, they never realize that just right is so much different spots. So just to emphasize that it's been really powerful to use this with clients as well.
Yeah, no, very, very good point, because, you know, the body knows and remembers. So certain positions where we are, even in our environment, how we sit on a chair, where we lean to, how we stand, how we hold our arms and shoulders, all of that gives us information of what is going on emotionally, and in too little and too much. And in just right, the body position will change. Or using metaphors is another cool way of doing it. What's a metaphor for too little? What's a metaphor for too much? And what's a metaphor for just right? Are all really great ways of exploring this stress curve. Okay, let's go to neuroplasticity. Challenge number 2, willing to fail, being out of the comfort zone. We all have our well-traveled pathways. That's the super highway that I was talking about earlier. Those are the neural pathways in the brain that have been created over years and years and years by repetitiveness. repetitive thinking about it, and then acting on it. So it's not just action, but it's also thinking. Every thought creates the first potential of two neurons getting connected. So the neurons fire, and the more the same thought and the same action happens, that neural connection gets stronger, it gets stickier. And the stickier it gets, the stronger it gets, the thicker the neural pathway. The great thing about that is if you have a superhighway in your brain, it takes very little effort for the brain to send the electrical signal from one neuron connection to the other. It goes very quickly, and it saves energy. This is why the brain prefers to go along the superhighway instead of these very untested newer neural pathways that I, metaphorically call a dirt road, because it takes effort. It takes intention and attention. And the brain runs on glucose. And so it basically tries to conserve energy by using superhighways instead of dirt roads. This is why clients and us get frustrated, tired, and often want to give up, because the superhighways are stronger, they're easier to travel along, while the dirt road constantly takes attention. So from a neuroscience perspective, this is the two neurons that fire together, wire together. That's a metaphor. There's actually no wiring going on. There is a space in between these two neurons that's called a synapse. And that is how these connections, these electrical circuits, so the electrical firing gets created and travels from one to the other. So neurons that fire together, wire together is something that we can remember, but it's a metaphor. The more we use it, the more developed it becomes. Just think about a dirt road and using it again and building and building and building. It gets better and better and better over time, and eventually becomes a well-traveled highway. The more developed it becomes, the more automatic it becomes. So there's a process in the brain where the brain likes to automate things because it just takes less energy. It's like, brushing your teeth, it's automated. How you make coffee, it's automated. How you do certain things, it's automated. So the brain doesn't need to think about it, and therefore conserves energy, while anything new requires it. And here is a saying by our good friend, Dr. Linda Page, who is the founder of the Adler Institute, a coaching school in Canada, Toronto. Neuroplasticity is a 6-syllable word for hope, because the brain is endlessly plastic. We can change anything and everything if we're willing, and we're putting intention and attention on it. And that's, in coaching, is sort of a prerequisite. The client needs to be willing. And they need to be able to put intention and attention on this change, because the brain doesn't do it in any other way. So if you have a client that's looking for a change, and you find out that they've been doing this very thing, whatever it is, for the last 15 years, and they want you to fix that in 3 months, you can tell them that's not going to happen. Because you cannot take a superhighway of 15 years, pull it apart, break it apart, and build a new road. It's just not going to happen. So well-traveled neural pathways take a long time to redo. And this makes a case for long-term coaching agreements. Yeah, Irene, go ahead. I saw you nod.
Yes, because my goodness, I had a client today, and everything you've said has hit right on it. I wish I had this tool. I'm going to have this to my side next time. But
call him back.
Yes.
Call him back. Send an email. I just had a call on neuroplasticity and what we talked about.
Yes. I mean, it's amazing. her context was very much about being misunderstood and the cultural difference. She's from a different culture and adjusting to the UK culture, which she loves, but the language and nuances and using of words and not understanding the impact it then has. And so she's been doing some reflection on it. And during the coaching, you know, she came to the realization that really she feels she needs to slow down her talking, because she does talk very fast, she said. And she also feels she needs to think more and think about the words she's about to use before she speaks, just so that she doesn't offend others. But in all of that, you know, she used the word, it's like, I need to retrain, I need to, you know, to train myself, but I don't have the time, it's going to take energy and everybody's stressed, who has time? So it was very much about, this is just too much energy, I don't have the time, but yet. So I tried to explain to her, but, you know, you've used the word training, and the more we practice something, the more easier it becomes, the more automatic. And this would have been a wonderful way to use the neuroplasticity of the brain to explain that phenomenon. So yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant and completely on, Irene. And, you know, talk about culture. You know, I'm from Germany, lived in the UK for 10 years, in Canada for 10 years, and worked internationally, and now live in the US. I tell you, moving from Germany to UK, I was a lot younger then. But oh boy, I mean, this wasn't a pathway that got rewired in a month or two. I mean, it took me actually years, because, you know, our culture is embedded into our brain, how we think. So any of you who live, you know, are expats of some sort, what we eat, what we smell, what we hear, the music, it gets wired in as children. And those neural pathways are actually hardwired. There is a process by which the brain hardwires in things from early childhood into the teenage years. And those neural pathways, they are steel reinforced superhighways. So this, and you can share this with her, you know, I mean,
yeah.
There is actually a really, really cool YouTube video, and it's called, and I type it in the chat. I keep keep forgetting to put this in the PowerPoint. It's called The Backwards Bicycle. I don't know. I've forgotten how to spell bicycle, but anyway, you get it. The backward bicycle. It's on YouTube. So this explains neuroplasticity in fun, funny, and right-on illustrations. It's a guy who builds a bicycle that where you don't pedal, where you don't steer this way, it goes the other way. It's contrary to what we've been learning. It's fascinating. You can send that to the client and say, that's your issue.
Yeah, I will do. And I love that and the metaphor as well of the superhighway. So easy to just fall into that easy. And the dirt road, which none of us like. So yes, that's brilliant.
No, absolutely. Yes. And I don't have the time and it's too hard. Well, if she wants to ever be happy and effective, she will have to invest the time in that, or she will struggle and struggle and struggle. And it's not going to be, that's going to be even harder than starting to put some intention and attention on what's going on. Yeah, go ahead.
So just, Ursula, I have maybe a question that we used to, in the old days, like they used to say that whenever you reach a certain age, it's like it's not easy for you to change or to really really get into anything to change. And that what's the concept of neuroplasticity defeats that now, and you can always like do changes at any age. But I'm curious to know, so you said like you moved from Germany to the UK, you were very young and you still took time like really to adapt and build your own neural pathways, like the new circuits again. So how would that really change with age? Like, would that be like, it will take more time? Is it like proportional? Just curious about I know that it can happen at any age, but what's the relevance like really here between age and the neuroplasticity?
Well, here's the great thing. In terms of age, you can change anything. It doesn't matter how old you are. The only difference is that the older you are, the stronger that pathway. So, you've done some. So at the age where I am at, and I shall not reveal how old I am, but at my age, there's lots of years of habits and habitual thinking. So this is why that's the only reason, because the neural pathways are just thicker, because we've been doing it for longer time. Now, in terms of moving multiple times, what also happens is over time, the brain then also adjusts to that novelty. It starts looking at, oh, we've been here before. We've done this before. This relates to prediction, which you are familiar with. So the brain really, constructs our emotions on a sort of prediction cycle based on history and previous evidence. So in my case, the brain, the transition culturally got easier over time because the brain had other reference pieces. It had reference. And the fewer reference we have, the harder it is, because the brain also wires things in by association. Going back to, cookie and coffee, that's an association. And so that neural pathway gets wired in by association. So in terms of change in coaching, it also helps to break the association. Drink something different place, different time of the day. Breaking that association can help in terms of changing neural pathways. Yeah, Jill, go ahead.
I think you already got into this, because I was going to ask the question, does it get easier the more you work with your neural pathways? So the more you kind of try and do things differently, I think that's kind of what you're saying, that the more we do it, the more the brain understands that we can work in different ways, and maybe makes it easier. But the other question I also had, is it, because if I look at clients or friends and family, and you look, so some people seem to have an easier way to, some people seem to be very set in their ways. And is it harder for people who are set in their ways to change, or is it just, then you could just make the decision, I'm going to change, and then it's the same for all of us? How does that work?
Yeah, no, really good point, and actually brings me to the next thing, Jill. And if it doesn't answer your question after I've done with the next slide, then let me know. But I want to share something that Svetlana just said, which is really funny. She said, I just had a cookie. We spoke too much about it. So to Jill's point, set in the way, there's definitely something to it, but what it means is they've just been doing things for too long. There might also not have the willingness to change whatever needs to change. Or, and look at this pie chart, there might be low on personal relevance. We only change what becomes really, really personally relevant to us. So if people are set in their ways and they feel like, oh, I've been doing this and this, it's too uncomfortable or whatever, it's probably this old habit is probably not painful enough yet. The more pain in whatever, or feedback, life is feedback, that they're getting when you have a leader and something doesn't work, well, that's feedback. And so the personal relevance that can really be raised in terms of, no, I need to change that or I'll lose my job, for example. I've just had that with a client. I need to change my approach of communicating things. It's not working, and I've been told if I don't change, I'll lose my job. That's personal relevance. It's very, very high. And then here are other, what we call the 7 factors to neuroplasticity. Being in a relationship that supports that change can be another thing, Jill. That person might not be in a relationship that supports that change, whatever it is. Personally relevant, values, vision, What's the pain? What's the benefit of not doing it? And what's the benefit of doing it? Novelty, finding a new way of doing it, making it fun, humor, play, number 6. And then focus and attention. It requires focus and attention if people have enough personal relevance and they're willing. So that, I think, explains your term, they're set in their ways. They just haven't realized any personal relevance yet, and maybe haven't clued in that whatever they're doing is actually not working, or they're ignoring it. So that is focus and attention. It could also be lack of awareness. In our program, we have a tool around neuroplasticity. That's what we call revealing the invisible. And so if people aren't aware what actually gets wired in here that is not effective, and what needs to be replaced, it's awfully hard to figure out, well, what am I actually focusing on? So these are 7 places in coaching where we can look in making change stickier. All 7 of them, one of them, which one is low, which one is high, where do you want to put your attention on? You have the instructions on the slide, is a really, really good tool to figure out, well, where are you in terms of this change? Does this make sense, Jill? Does this answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, set in your ways. Well, what it means is I prefer to travel along the superhighway. I don't want to travel along the dirt road. And so, absolutely, there's people who just don't want to, or they say they can't. But I think the subtext is I don't want to, because we can. It's just the question, do we want to? So, okay. Yeah, Natalia, sorry, I almost missed you there.
I have a question. All those 7 factors that you listed there, are they listed in the order of importance, or are they equally important?
No, they're just if you are a CTI coach, you probably know this. It's the wheel of life, and we've just changed it to the wheel of neuroplasticity. So we sort of modified it. No, it's just one of 7. There isn't anything in terms of what is more important. For me, I think in terms of coaching, personal relevance is a big one.
Yeah, I was
think
just about to say that.
Yeah, if we can't figure out why this is relevant to the client, it's going to be hard for them. And then if they are living with someone, for example, if it's in terms of health or diet or working out, and if they live with someone that can't support that or is the opposite of that, that can also be hard. But I think personal relevance is the key that unlocks the door. And from then, all the others are just sort of nice additions. They can be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, for example, people think, changing something has to be serious. Well, it's serious, but it can also be fun. And when I ask my clients, how could this be fun? They are completely deer in the headlights. It's like fun. It's never occurred to me. Never occurred to me that it could be fun. So, but yeah, personal relevance is a big one for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Let me check the time. Okay, great. We are doing great. Okay. Challenge number 3. Who are we? Being or doing? What should come first? What should we do more of? And here is the deal. Our brains has 2 ways of working. There is the task positive network. That's one way of working, which is very externally focused on a task. It's present moment, right here, right now, super focused on what's right in front of you. The goal, the short-term memory, using short-term memory, working, planning, calendar, emails, making a list, anything that requires your present moment attention. That's one way of working. And many of our clients task, focus, focus, focus from one meeting to the next meeting, all of which requires incredible focused attention. And then there's the other way of working. This task positive network, Anne and I use the metaphor of the engineers of the brain. They are measuring, they are building, they are doing things. And then there's the default mode. That's the other way we work, or the brains work. And that's those are the little wizards that work underground in the background. You don't see them, you hear them quietly. This is when your brain is at rest. Then you can dream, you can think about the future. It uses long-term memory. It's very good at pondering, self-reflecting. It's a very reflective network in the brain. It helps you understand others. It's very self-referential. And what that means is that a default mode network looks at everything through the self. What does it mean to me? What does it feel like to me? And if I do this, what would other people think about me or the thing? And so the default mode gets activated when we are not focusing. And it is very important for sudden insights, for aha moments, for wisdom. While the task positive network is good for planning and budgets and to-do lists and things like that. There is a downside to both. If we're spending too much time in the task positive network, what we start losing is creativity. I don't know about any of you, but when I have a day, full, excuse me. When I have a day full of really focused attention, there comes a time when I sort of stare at my computer. I had this happening to me the other day. Somebody wanted something. They asked me a question. It was the end of the day. I had multiple calls. I led a pod, and I looked at the email and I couldn't figure out what to say. It was like, I've got nothing. I got nothing here. I've got nothing left. I have no idea. And so that is loss of creativity. Things begin to feel very dry and uninspirational. You start thinking, why on earth am I even doing it? There's no point. And the default mode, because it's the time traveler of the brain, it goes to the past and goes to the future. Your brain can end up in rumination. And what that basically means is limiting beliefs, regrets from the past, and worry about the future. Saboteur, limiting beliefs, the little voices that keep saying, oh, you shouldn't, and you haven't, and could have, would have, and all that. So these are the two networks of the brain, the engineers. I am going to stop here. Questions? How does this make sense to you? Come off mute or type it in the chat. Irene.
Yes, it does make sense. Thank you so much. And I'm just wondering, when sitting between the TPN and the default something, sorry, between the two.
Yeah, the DMN, yeah.
Yeah, it is what dictates where somebody is. I mean, I suppose with the task, it's workload and maybe overworking, and the demands would keep somebody in that end, the T side. But I suppose stress comes into that as well. And where you sit on that bell curve, where you're sitting, whether you're in the ideal position and therefore able to give enough time to both, or
yes,
if you're in highly stressed, then you're more than likely in the task orientated area.
It's interesting. That's a really good point. When you're in just right, and I talked about the brain as a system, this really points to it beautifully, Irene. So when we are in just right, the brain has the ability to move fluidly from task to default mode. In that moment, the brain has the ability to go like, I'm getting tired over here. I need to shut my computer down and go for a walk. I need to give myself some default mode. And so the more you end up on the too little or the too much side, the less of that fluid integration moving of the network happens. The thing about stress is that the focused attention and stress doesn't go together very well. Because when we are stressed, we are actually losing focused attention. When we are stressed, I think we become more distracted, which is another word for the default mode. It's the brain wanders. So, really focused attention really helps when we are more in that just right zone. Natalia, how could we apply these two modes in our sessions with clients? You're ahead of the game. There is a tool and it's coming up right now. So let's do that. Okay. So that's what I was talking about, Irene. That's that, when you think about the TPN and DMN, it's like a teeter-totter. It's like a seesaw. We move the brain, the networks move sort of fluently from one to the other. If you would put the brain in a brain scanner, to the degree that we are, for example, in TPN, to the degree that we are having focused attention, to a lesser degree, the DMN is activated. So if you think about lights in the brain scanner, you would have lots of lights in the TPN and a reduced firing in the DMN. And so to the degree we are in one or the other one gets quieter and less activated. And this is why we get stuck. If somebody is really focus, all of a sudden it's all about mostly TPN, and to that degree, then the brain doesn't have access to the DMN. And so that's the in the just right, we just have a better awareness of what needs to happen when. Okay, good question. Tool is called Crossing the River. And what I'm wanting us to do is actually do it together. So if you are here and present, or even if you're not on a video, it's quite okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you for a topic. We'll do this quietly, and we're going to start on one side of the, so think about the networks as riverbanks. And in the middle, you have the river. On the left-hand side, you have the default mode, and on the right-hand side, you have task-positive network. And then there are bridges that you can cross depending on what's needed for your brain. And the way this would work and will work in terms of us doing it together, and you can switch off your video if you don't feel comfortable getting up and moving around, that's totally fine, because we're going to get up in a moment and stand on one side of the riverbank. I need you to think about a project, something you're wanting to do, writing a book, getting more clients, website, whatever it is. And think about where you are currently. Are you really have your focused attention on this? Do you need more dreaming, or have you dreamt a lot and now you need focused attention? Just sort of hold this in the background. Obviously, if you were an individual client, I would ask you which side of the riverbank you want to start. Since we're doing it as a group, I'm going to just start on a riverbank and then have us move from one to the other, just so you get a flavor. Again, high touch flavor. Okay. All right. And I'm going to get up with you. So what I'd like you to do is actually stand on the riverbank of the default mode network, which is about dreaming and thinking about what is possible and all of that. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. There we go. All right. Oh, this feels good. All right. So you are standing on the left hand of the riverbank. think of a river close by. It's beautifully running, and here you are in the default mode network. So I want you to really ground yourself in that. Just checking timing. Okay, that's good. Default mode. Okay, in terms of your topic, what is the dream? So just think about, what is the dream I have in terms of this project, this topic? What is the dream? What's possible as you're standing in the pondering, restful place? What's possible? What's possible in the future as you see this? And what's it like if you imagine yourself here? What are the colors, the sounds, the smells? How do you stand? How do you walk? All right. When you're ready, take a look at this bridge that goes across the other riverbank. So let's walk across the bridge. Now you're on the TPN side, on the task positive night, so you're very focused. Just ground yourself here. What do you notice? Do you stand differently here on this riverbank? You're holding yourself differently than over there on the default mode? And a question from this riverbank is, how can this vision become real? What's a tangible goal? Just one. What do you need to focus on in terms of the dream and the vision? What do you need to put your attention on in the right here, right now, in the present moment? And what might you want to do next? Like when this call is done, in terms of this dream, the vision, the pondering that you did on the default mode side, what's one thing you can do when we're done here? Whatever that is, I'd like to write it down. Now, one more time, take a look at the other bridge. Let's go back to the default mode. This one thing that you've just written down, how could that be fun? Fun and meaningful to you and to others. Okay, great. We will finish here and let's come back and sit down. Okay. Well, what was that like? What did you notice? What did you feel on either side of the riverbank? Yes, Ruba, go ahead.
It was really interesting because I was thinking of a project that I'm kind of postponing for a while. I have been postponing. I mean, I started working on it very hard, and then suddenly I felt that I'm giving myself a break, but the break took longer period of time than it was supposed to take. I mean, it was supposed to take few days, and now it has been a month so far. So it was really interesting to go through these questions. My question here is, if I use this tool with a client, shall I ask the questions and let him keep the answers to himself, or should he or she verbally speak them out? And
really good question. Yeah, no, very, very good question. That depends on the client. I have clients that process verbally and they want to talk. And then I have clients who don't, that want to make notes, that want to journal on it. And then when we are done with it all, then, we sit down and then I debrief. I prefer for them to talk because it gives me a sense of energy, whether they're done on one side of the riverbank or not, because it begins to feel like on the default mode side, it begins to feel that they've done all the dreaming and the space begins to feel sort of full.
Mm-hmm.
And in the task positive network side, they start sort of talking in ways that is not inspiring anymore. They sort of lose interest. And that gives me an idea that they need to move back. So it helps when they talk about it. But there are some clients who prefer not to. It is my preference for them to talk out loud as we're asking the questions. For the reasons that I just explained, it will help me sort of go like, okay, let's go back to the other side. But sometimes I also say to the client, are you done on this side now? Do you want to move over? Do you want to move over again? What do you want to do? And they are very clear of saying, no, I'm done here. I'd like to go to the other side now. So these are different variations.
Okay, so when you ask if you want to move to the other side, this means prior to our exercise, I would explain. So then the client is aware of the different banks of the river and the different situations of each bank, and then he chooses if he wants to stay here or he wants to go back or move forward.
Yes, I explained very briefly that that there are two networks in the brain. One is about present moment focused attention, very external attention in this present moment. And one network is about the brain being sort of at rest and wandering to the past and to the future. It's sort of like being distracted, thinking about all kinds of things and nothing in specific. So, very high level, these are the two networks. Where do you want to start? Where are you right now? What shows up? Does it make sense? What else would you say? I mean, I have them sort of stand and say, task positive network is about focused external attention in the moment. What does that mean to you? And they're often say, when I'm writing emails, when I'm, planning my meeting, etc., etc. And then default mode, it's like when you're dreaming, about nothing in particular. I often say these are the moments in the shower when you're not focused on anything, but you suddenly get this insight.
Okay.
You have a problem, you have an issue, you let it go, and then you get in the shower and you go like, oh yes, of course, that's what it is. That's default mode.
Yeah. So when then finally, my last question here, when we ask them to go back to the default mode and the one thing that they wrote, and ask them how it can be fun. What do you mean here? This one, I didn't get it. When I said, I mean, the last, the step that they need to do, and then ask them on the bank again, the other bank, how this can be done in a fun way for them and for others. Can you elaborate more here? Can you explain, please?
No, I mean, I can't. It's just a question. I mean, how can we activate the dream, the default mode network? And, focused attention is serious business. Default mode is light. So the question about lightness, how can it be fun? How can it be light? How can it be impactful? Meaning, those are all aspects of the default mode. So if you look at the PowerPoint slide, we're just going to bring it up again. Oops. Why does this not work? Oh, for some reason, it doesn't go back. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, when you look at the TPN-DMN slide of the description of the networks, it is sort of like the energy of lightness versus serious present moment attention. So, from that perspective, you can add questions that are not necessarily on this handout on the PowerPoint slide. I mean, you are all experienced coaches, so whatever feels like more the pondering, self-reflecting, brain at rest is a question that will activate the default mode. Yeah? Sinamis, go ahead.
Thank you so much for all the amazing, bits and pieces of information. I just wanted to add that I really love this tool, the envisioning tool, and then going to the what's next, what are the action steps. And the first part where we are in the default mode, it's where the buy-in of the client is triggered. It's where the motivation and enthusiasm to what's next. An example that came to my mind when Ruba asked about how to incorporate fun. For example, if a client wants to lose weight and they believe that they have to go to the gym. So have to is kind of heavy. And it's not, out of passion or out of strong will. So how can we add more fun to that? We can see what's fun for the client. So maybe music is fun. Maybe having a partner with him or her in the exercise is fun. So we take that fun part and incorporate it into the have to go to the gym. So now the gym is not a have to, it's more of I want to do it because I'm having more fun. I'm listening to music, I have my partner with me, or whatever fun is for the client in relation to that topic.
Yeah. And that is, you very well said, that is about, taking the attention off the doing, because TPN is the doing. We do it. There's a plan, there's a step, the goal is going to the gym 3 times a week. That's the plan. Next step is gym clothes on there. And if we do this in this focused attention too long, or we put too much attention in, as you said, Sinamis, the client can come to a point where it says like, it's just not inspiring anymore. So then on the default mode, it's not only about dreaming of, what will it feel like? What will I look like when I work out, and what clothes will I wear, and all that, but also then, as you said, the fun aspect, where the motivation and the inspiration is. And so the default mode is the beingness, the being of being inspired, being in the game, having a vision and a dream. And the task positive is just coming back and sitting down and doing it. It's the do it network. So yeah, well said, Sinamis. I appreciate that. Okay, needing to keep an eye on the, no, we still have time. Still, we're doing great. Yeah, what else came up for you as you were walking from one riverbank to the other? Type in the chat or come on off mute. Yes, Jill, go ahead.
Tendencies to be better in one or the other.
I'm sorry, say again.
Is there is it the same as with the pathways, that we are like better, or like we find it easier to be in one side than the other side? Is it easier for some people to be a dreamer than it is to be doing tasks? And is it the same there, that you have to practice?
It can definitely be linked to habits. I think there are some people whose happy place is the default mode, and some people whose happy place is the task positive network. So we can get habituated in spending a lot of time in one or the other. I see this in my executive clients over years and years and years. It has all been about productivity. And so they get habituated to believing that that's the way to go, and they lose the fluidity and the permission to access the default mode. And that, in certain working environments, it is literally saying, I need permission to let it go. I need permission to go for a walk. I need permission to take a rest. And so it can often be embedded in the culture. So yeah, absolutely. We can get habituated to finding either that it's our comfort zone or that it's a should. We should be task oriented. Irene, confused in the default mode versus energized in the task path. The return to the first path made it easier to create the fun element. Irene, come off mute. Say more about that.
Yeah, so what I found, the sort of topic that I was thinking of, that, when I was standing in the default, which is where I think I am, and I've been thinking, and I realized that's where I am. I'm here too long. It's got to the point of I'm just ruminating now, I'm just procrastinating.
Yes.
So it was sort of great to cross the bridge and thinking about what's helping me, what other things, that are helping me to get there. And when I got to the other side, the first thing I had was, clarity, and I felt energized. I felt connected, like there was purpose. And so I was then thrown when it was, how do I make this fun? So as I crossed back over the bridge into the default, I felt a bit lost, but in that place, I came up with the creativity. What would make that fun for me to start putting into place that task? What will make it fun and therefore easier and not so hard and cold? Yeah.
Yes.
So I love
and
what you said, the fluidity. It's what was
and
happening.
you're pointing to a couple of really interesting things, Irene. When you said I went back to the default mode and I got a little lost, that's default mode. That is typical of the default mode because we're not focused. We're sort of like lost and distracted. But in these lost and distracted moments where everything is possible and we're not honed into one particular thing, that is when a thought can come of saying, oh, yes, exactly. Back to the other thing that you said, in default mode, when you have a client that talks about procrastination, they are most likely spending too much time in the default mode. They're dreaming, visioning, some more vision, more dreaming, and nothing ever gets done. I'm sure you have a client like that. I certainly do.
And I'm understanding it. Yeah.
I know, dream, and more dream, and another dream. And it's like, okay, I want a website. There's a dream, and there's the color and more pictures. And it's like, the website is still nowhere close to be brought into life. That's all default mode. And so there again is moving the client over to task and saying one thing, just do one thing, focus on one thing. So procrastination, being distracted, and the good part is being lost in it, where you can tap into possibilities. Those are all good words, Irene, to describe the default mode.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Last but not least, very quickly, you've heard me talk about the program here and there. I don't know. Why can't I move my PowerPoint around anymore? Any idea? It's stuck. Oh, there it is. Had to double click. Don't know why. Anyway. There we go. That's the slide I wanted. You have the BEabove website on there. We have a intensive program starting in May. And the intensives are shorter, but longer calls. So usually the program is 40 weeks divided into 4 quarters, and each call is 2 hours long. The intensive is 5 weeks, and the calls are 4 hours. So that's Thursdays, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern. And we have a special rate for all you wonderful folks in the ICF Lebanon chapter, $1,000 off early bird. The early bird is $4,295, and we give you an extra discount of $1,000 off until April 1st. That discount is not on the website because it's only for you. So please send me an email if you are interested. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ursula. You meant ICF Jordan, of course. Yeah, that was for ICF Jordan chapter, because you've had that webinar for Lebanon. So I believe you meant ICF Jordan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, but I didn't change that. I didn't change that out. I beg your pardon. Yes.
No problem. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thank you so much. We really enjoyed it. It was a great, for me, some glimpse of the program. I took the whole program with Ursula and Anne, and it was amazing upgrade for my coaching skills and my level of coaching and understanding how is this conversation between me and the client is going on, understanding the brain in a deeper way. So I highly recommend the program. It's really amazing.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for participation, for your presence. I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate all your comments in your chat. I'm Ursula at BEaboveLeadership.com. If you have any questions after this, and sometimes that happens, we go off and suddenly the default mode kicks in and goes like, I should have asked this question. Please don't hesitate, to ask. and send me an email. Always, always welcome. So thank you. You are just delightful. I just so enjoyed it. Thank you for all your questions and insights. And thank you to you for organizing. So
Thank
take
you,
good
Ursula.
care. And hopefully I will see you in one of our programs. Okay.
I want to urge everyone, if you haven't filled out the form that I have in the chat, please do and register your attendance. I have provided a link for it. Before you leave, you just save the link so that you can have your CCEs.
ICF CPUs.
Yeah.
There it is. Looks pretty. I love the green. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you,
Take
Ursula.
Thank you,
care.
everyone.
Thank you so
Lovely
much for
meeting
being
you
with
all.
us today. We appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for
Thank you.
attending
Bye.
today.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.